Last spring, I watched my neighbor spread 10-10-10 fertilizer across his tomato beds while the Amish farmer next door stood at his fence, just watching, not saying anything, just watching. My neighbor's plants shot up fast, bright green and tall, but by July they were struggling with blight and producing watery tomatoes. Meanwhile, the Amish farmer's plants, growing in soil that hadn't seen a bag of fertilizer in 40 years, were still producing heavy clusters of fruit into October. Dark, rich soil you could push your hand into up to your wrist. That was the moment I started asking questions. His name was Samuel, third generation on that land. When I finally worked up the nerve to ask him what he used instead of fertilizer, he looked at me like I'd asked what he used instead of water. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You're feeding your plants. I'm feeding my soil." He turned back to his compost pile, pushed his fork in deep, and steam rose up into the morning air. Today, I'm going to show you their complete soil feeding system, 5 practical steps you can set up this season. And at the end, I'll share Samuel's newspaper trick that transforms poor soil in one season, using something you probably threw away this morning. I need to be honest about where I was before I learned this. For 15 years, I did what everyone does. Started with 10-10-10, because that's what my father used. When that stopped working, I switched to organic fertilizers, fish emulsion that cost $18 a gallon and made my whole yard smell like a pier, bone meal at $25 a bag, blood meal that attracted every raccoon in the county. I was spending $300 a season trying to force nutrients into soil that couldn't hold them. My tomatoes still got blight. My squash still succumbed to borers. The soil still turned to concrete every August. I'd test it every spring, see the same deficiencies, and buy more amendments. It wasn't until Samuel showed me his soil test results, looking great across the board without a single purchased input, that I realized I'd been fighting a war I couldn't win. His soil wasn't just healthy, it was getting better every year. When you buy fertilizer, you're renting nutrition for one season. When you feed your soil, you're building permanent wealth. The Amish never rent their fertility, they own it. Samuel's grandfather started that soil. His father built on it. Now Samuel tends it for his children. 3 generations, 0 fertilizer bills, soil that gets richer every year. Soil remembers, Samuel told me. Treat it like dirt, it acts like dirt. Feed it like a living thing, it feeds you back. The foundation of the entire system is compost. And I don't mean those plastic bins they sell at the hardware store. I'm talking about a proper pile, right on the ground, at least the size of a large washing machine. Here's exactly how Samuel builds his. Start with a 4 to 6 inch layer of carbon materials. Fallen leaves work best, but straw or even shredded cardboard will do. I lost my first 3 piles because I built them on bare ground without this base. The whole thing turned into a soggy, anaerobic mess that smelled like a sewer. The carbon layer lets air flow up from the bottom. Now here's where the Amish approach really comes together. Layer your kitchen scraps and grass clippings about 3 inches thick on top of the carbon. No meat, no oils, but everything else goes in. Coffee grounds, eggshells, vegetable scraps, then another carbon layer. Keep alternating, always ending with carbon on top. The ratio matters, about 3 parts brown to 1 part green. I know that feels imprecise, but Samuel showed me the handful test. Grab a handful from the middle of your pile after a week. Squeeze it. Should feel like a wrung-out sponge, and you might see a drop or 2 of moisture. Too wet? Add more carbon. Too dry? Add water and green material. I'll tell you, the first time I saw Samuel turn his pile, I was shocked at the steam. He pushed that fork in and clouds rose up like a chimney. That's running hot in the center, hot enough to kill weed seeds and pathogens. He turns it every Saturday morning after chores. Takes him about 12 minutes. I timed it once because I didn't believe him when he said it wasn't much work. The finished compost is usually ready in about 6 to 8 weeks in summer, maybe 10 to 12 in cooler weather. You'll know it's done when it smells like the forest floor after rain, and you can't identify any of the original materials. There's another piece to this that most people overlook entirely.
cover crops. And I'm not talking about just winter rye. The Amish use specific combinations. In zones 5 through 7, Samuel plants crimson clover with winter rye in September. The rye grows tall and captures carbon from the air. The clover fixes nitrogen in its root nodules, a lot of it, according to the Extension Office. In spring, he doesn't till it under. This is critical. He cuts it at ground level and leaves the roots intact. Those roots have been feeding soil organisms all winter. I don't know all the science, but something about fungal networks that thread through the soil, creating highways for nutrients and water. Tilling destroys all of that in seconds.
Now, mulching is where the Amish approach gets really interesting. Samuel uses 4 to 6 inches of straw or hay on everything, not the decorative stuff. Real straw from a local farm, $4 a bale. He lays it thick enough that you can't see soil. I know that feels wrong. We've been taught that plants need bare soil to warm up, but here's what actually happens. The mulch moderates soil temperature, keeping it cooler in summer heat and warmer on cold nights. It holds moisture so consistently that Samuel waters maybe once a week in the hottest weather. I water every other day. The mulch also breaks down slowly, feeding the soil organisms below. By fall, that 6-inch layer has decomposed to maybe 2 inches of rich organic matter. There's a whole industry built around making soil building seem complicated. Soil tests, pH meters, nutrient calculators, amendment schedules. The Amish use compost, cover crops, and mulch. That's it. And here's the part that really got me. No-till isn't just about saving labor. When you don't disturb the soil, fungal networks stay intact. These networks extend root systems dramatically. They trade nutrients for plant sugars, creating a living marketplace under your feet. Samuel didn't know the science, his grandmother didn't know the science, but they observed generation after generation that undisturbed soil grew better crops. You see how this all connects? The compost feeds immediate nutrition. The cover crops add nitrogen and organic matter. The mulch protects and slowly feeds. The no-till preserves the living networks that tie it all together. It's not 4 separate techniques, it's one system, and the Amish have been running it for generations. I went from buying $300 of fertilizer every year and still fighting constant problems to spending maybe $40 on straw and seeds. My tomato yields went from about 22 pounds per bed to over 60 pounds, and that's not an exaggeration. I weighed them because I couldn't believe the difference myself. Let me share some patterns I have noticed over the years that separate the Amish approach from what most of us were taught. I did every one of these myself for a long time, so there is no judgment here. The first pattern is tilling every spring. It's what we do, right? My father did it, his father did it. But tilling destroys soil structure and fungal networks that take months to rebuild. The Amish only disturb soil when first creating a bed. After that, they layer on top. The second pattern is leaving soil bare between plants. We think it looks neat and tidy, but bare soil is damaged soil. It crusts in rain, bakes in sun, and loses carbon to the atmosphere. The Amish mulch everything, always. Their soil never sees direct sun. The third pattern is removing all plant debris in fall. We rake it clean, bag it up, send it away. That's your fertility leaving in garbage bags. The Amish chop and drop everything right where it grew. Free mulch, free compost, nutrients returned to exactly where they're needed. The fourth pattern is growing the same crops in the same spots. Tomatoes in the tomato patch, potatoes in the potato patch. That's how disease builds and nutrients deplete. The Amish rotate religiously, 4-year minimum before any crop returns to the same soil. Now, what I've shared with you today is a real piece of the puzzle, but it's still just one piece. If you're tired of fighting the same battles every season, if you want a garden that actually works with you instead of against you, then I'd really encourage you to check out the guide I put together. The 30-day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol includes the complete 4-bed rotation system Samuel taught me, plus companion planting combinations that actually work. Link in the description below, or use the QR code on your screen. Now for that newspaper trick I mentioned. This works on the worst clay or sand you've got. Samuel learned it from his grandmother, though she used feed sacks instead. Lay newspaper 10 sheets thick directly on your worst soil. Don't till, don't dig, just lay it flat. Overlap edges by 6 inches. Wet it down thoroughly until it clings to the ground. Then, dump 4 inches of compost right on top. Plant directly into the compost. The newspaper blocks weeds completely while decomposing slowly. Earthworms love it. They'll drill through from below. By next spring, you can't find the newspaper. It's become soil. But here's what shocked me. The clay underneath transformed too. Went from hard pan you couldn't dig to chocolate cake texture. Something about the worms and microbes moving between the layers, carrying organic matter down and minerals up. It is almost too simple, and I wish someone had shown me this 20 years ago.
Now, what I'm showing you today is just one piece of a much bigger picture. The Amish don't do anything in isolation. Every technique connects to a whole system. And that system is what makes the difference between a garden that struggles and a garden that practically takes care of itself. I spent years learning how it all fits together, and I've put everything into a step-by-step guide. The complete soil building system, the pest prevention protocols, the companion planting maps that actually work. If you want to go deeper, check out the link below. I think you'll find it's exactly what you've been looking for. Last week, I grabbed a handful of soil from my tomato bed. Dark as coffee grounds, smelled like rain in the woods. Same smell from Samuel's garden that day 3 years ago. You're feeding your plants. I'm feeding my soil. Once you understand that difference, everything changes. Drop a comment below and tell me what you're growing this season. I read every single one. And I'll see you in the next one.